Hi everyone. For this one, I'm trying something new. I'm speaking into this camera whilst reading an article. Usually, what I would do is read directly from a newspaper or use my other laptop. It's playing around at the moment, so um, I'm going to attempt to just speak into the camera whilst reading the article, which means making this window smaller. So bear with me. Hopefully, I won't lose the video. This is about the Super Embassy in London, and I'm just going to read out from the London Evening Standard. Just check that I've still got this video. Seems to be okay so far. It's not ideal, this method, but I'm going to try and see how it goes. Okay, so this is from the London Evening Standard, and it's a report by Bill Boycott. The White House has urged Downing Street to block plans for a new Chinese super embassy near London's financial districts. Construction of the building was blocked amid espionage fears from local residents as well as human rights campaigners and politicians. Seem to still have the video here, so it seems to be going okay. But the plan has been revived, with Angela Rayner calling in the decision last year, and ministers due to make the call on whether the hugely controversial embassy should go ahead. China's President Xi Jinping is said to have personally lobbied Number 10 for the complex at Royal Mint Court in East Smithfield. It is also believed Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi brought up the matter with Foreign Secretary David Lammy whilst visiting the capital last year. The proposed site lies directly between the City of London and Canary Wharf and close to three significant data centres. Security experts say its proximity to critical communication cables make it susceptible to a possible cyber attack. It's understood that US President Donald Trump has warned Prime Minister Keir Starmer against giving the project the go-ahead. The matter is believed to have been discussed during trade talks, with British diplomats trepidatious about sharing intelligence with British allies if the embassy went ahead. It's understood the situation has threatened to derail negotiations on a US-UK trade deal, with the Mail on Sunday reporting Washington has asked for a China lock as part of the talks, which would guarantee the development will not present a security threat to the US. A senior US official told the Sunday Times the United States is deeply concerned about providing China with potential access to the sensitive communications of one of our closest allies. It comes after claims dark cabling running beneath the proposed site feeds the city were handed, in a memo by the U.S. National Security Council by members of the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China. John Mulaney, a Republican congressman from Michigan and head of the House of Representatives China Committee, claimed the site would pose an unacceptable risk to both London and Washington. The Chinese Communist Party has a clear track record of targeting critical infrastructure, he said. This development would raise serious concerns in the United States and could be viewed as an act of strategic overreach by Beijing and a curious error in judgment by London. Victor Pulford, executive director of IPAC, dubbed the matter as a flashpoint in discussions on how UK steel producers could avoid being lumbered with 50% import tariffs from next month. Scrolling down here, there's a lot of advertisements. I'm trying to navigate that. He pressured, he added, it's time to send Xi Jinping a clear message. No matter there's a lot of ads here, so I'm trying to. It's time to send Xi Jinping a clear message. No matter the pressure or coercion, the UK and US won't trade away national security, and this embassy isn't happening. The proposal for China's embassy, the country's largest in Europe, was previously rejected by Tower Hamlets Council in 2022. However, a fortnight after Chancellor Rachel Reeves came back from a visit to Beijing in January, both the local authority and Scotland Yard's objections were dropped. Beijing resubmitted its plans in August without making any major changes. Priti Patel, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, branded China a dangerous threat to the national and economic security of our country. While on Sunday, in response to the White House intervention, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said allowing a Chinese embassy to be built near London's financial centres is a security risk and permission should not be given. In government, the Conservatives were very clear we should not be allowing the Chinese to build this super embassy, he said. It is likely to become a base for the pan-European espionage activities and it sits very close to, of course, the UK's financial centre. It's very close to three critical data centres, data cables connecting, for example, Canary Wharf to the city run very close, or indeed even underneath the site, and it's very likely the Chinese would use it to organise espionage activities. We've seen the Chinese government cracking down on dissidents, running secret police stations in the UK, even putting bounties on the heads of dissidents, some of whom I've met. We should not be given permission to do this. Giving permission to do this. China previously quashed any spy allegations, stating anti-China elements are always keen on slandering and attacking China. Well, of course they're going to say that. A UK government spokesman said applications for a new Chinese embassy in Tower Hamlets have been called in for ministers to decide. A final decision will be made in due course. Technology Secretary Peter Kyle told Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips on Sky News these issues will be taken care of assiduously in the planning process. But just to reassure people, we deal with embassies and these sort of infrastructure issues all the time. Yeah, I doubt they deal with this sort of embassy all the time. We are very experienced of it, and we are very aware of these sorts of issues constantly, not just when new buildings are being done, but all the time. It's a pretty vapid response. Asked about the US warning, he said these are issues that we talk about as two countries all the time. We're in the Five Eyes Agreement. America and Britain share intelligence. We are one of the few countries in the world that share intelligence. Mr. Kyle added, if people raise security issues, even though it relates to planning, then I'm sure we will have a fulsome response for them. Look, the key thing is these are issues which are quite routinized in the way that we deal with the security of our country. This is not new. It's going through planning. These are issues that will be dealt with in that process. I think that's a very weak and evasive response because this isn't just like any embassy. It's not like an embassy, for instance, if Belgium wanted a new embassy or Gabon wanted a new embassy or a friendly country like Japan, South Korea wanted a new embassy. We're talking about the People's Republic of China, a rising superpower, and a mega embassy. I think Kyle's response is weak. It's just a typical politician's answer, evasive and not really dealing with the concerns. It's going through a planning process. We'll deal with this in due course, etc., etc. Um, some British politicians have been very vocal on the issue. For example, Ian Duncan Smith. I've had my disagreements with Ian Duncan Smith. His time as Work and Pension Secretary was particularly egregious, but he is right about China, and to his credit, he's been consistent on that issue. I think that if the government goes ahead with this, then and there's some sort of major data breach or there's some sort of major example of espionage, and indeed there already have been. There's been Chinese nationals arrested in this country, or at least nationals who've come under scrutiny. I don't know what the follow up actually is. Um, But anyone who thinks that there's no Chinese state threat to this country is deluded. What concerns me is Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer, and David Lammy are putting the lure of the Chinese economy ahead of our national security. Um, and this will be an incredibly, incredibly stupid thing to do. If Starmer and Reeves decide that it's worth the price, and there is some sort of major data breach or some example of major hacking or something like that, and it's traced back to the Chinese embassy, they will have to answer for that. The security service has been warning of this for years. It's not just China hawks who've been warning about it. The security services have been warning about it for years. Of course, Beijing makes arrogant, knee-jerk response that it's anti-China elements. Well, we've got a very good basis for those anti-China sentiments. Fact is, in the Chinese consulate in Manchester, thugs tried to drag in protesters in order to sort of frame them as attacking the consulate. What actually happened was there was protests outside the consulate. Absolutely, black jails operate in this country, or black sites in order to interrogate and intimidate Chinese dissidents. Um, Absolutely, there is nefarious activity going on from the Chinese regime. We cannot trust them. And I think Starmer and Lamy need to show backbone when it comes to dealing with Xi Jinping and Wang Yi. It would be an absolute disgrace and it would be a national shame if this goes ahead because Starmer and Lamy have allowed themselves to be pushed around. Now, they have demonstrated that they've stood up to Russia. That's good. But they need to show that resolve when it comes to China. We cannot let this go ahead just because there's demands from Xi Jinping and Wang Yi. The Chinese regime needs to know that it can't always have its own way. They're bullies, and the only answer that bullies understand is strength. If we just pander to them, if we just say, okay, this is going to go ahead because, they'll offer a huge amount of money, it would be an incredibly dangerous message. Why? Because they'll think if we could get away with this, the British are a soft touch. We could do anything in that country. Other European countries have taken a line against Confucius Institutes. We failed to do so. Um, Successive governments have taken a hard line with Russia, but we continue to be a soft touch when it comes to China. It's not enough for Keir Starmer to mention human rights abuses, which is, I think he should. But this is also about our national security. And I think Labour's direction when it comes to China is deeply alarming because they're indicating that they're going to pander to Beijing as much as possible. I don't think Rachel Reeves should have visited China. Um, I don't say we should have no communication with China. That would be not very practical, given that it's the world's second biggest economy. I am absolutely convinced that you cannot deal with China on the pretext of we have to just not, they're powerful, so we better not offend them. We better give them what they want. That is a disgrace. That sort of philosophy is utter appeasement. Wang Yi and Xi Jinping are thugs. They're communist hardliners who care about only one thing, China's power. That is the only thing they care about. They died to the world over COVID. Millions died, millions suffered, including 250,000 people in this country. That was a direct result of their lies. Instead of dealing with that initially, as they should have done by containing it, they decided to punish the whistleblowers. Um, so when I see British politicians, the British government, pandering to Beijing, giving the impression that this might go ahead, I find it deeply alarming. If this embassy goes ahead and there is a major data breach or there's a major example of Chinese espionage, and we've already had people come under investigation. There's been a few cases. There was a woman in Birmingham who ran a legal practice, and she'd been involved in the British Chinese community for a long time. I'm not saying she was British Chinese; she was a Chinese national, but I'm talking about British Chinese cooperation programs. Turns out that MI5 named her as a CCP spy. She'd been operating for years, no criminal record, but why would they? Spies, the whole point is to fit into the community, to appear to be a role model citizen. Um, and the result being examples of parliamentarians being compromised. At this time, several MPs have their names on a blacklist by Beijing. Under those circumstances, it's an utter disgrace that Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, and David Lammy think it's appropriate under to Beijing. We should be standing up to these thugs. The CCP is a ghastly regime. Yes, we have to deal with them to some extent, but that shouldn't be more than we have to. And it shouldn't be giving them an embassy that they don't deserve and which will unquestionably be used as a mega spy base. It doesn't matter what reassurances they give. They're liars. Of course they're going to use a huge embassy as a spy base. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's a rising superpower, if not already a superpower. It's proven that it's been involved in nefarious activities across Western countries. Can anyone seriously believe that they're not going to use a massive complex for nefarious activities? Of course, there'll be conventional activities as well, you know, um, granting visas and so on. There'll be that mainstream sort of activity. But, I just think it's astonishing that this Labour government can be so naive as to not see the security threat at risk here. And it would also demonstrate that Keir Starmer's government is not taking the security services seriously. They've repeatedly warned about the Chinese threat. Cross-party parliamentarians have, from all parties. So why is Keir Starmer not taking it seriously? It's an incredible lack of judgment. It's appeasement. And if this goes ahead, it would be an absolute utter disgrace, and it will shame Starmer, Reeves, and Lammy for the rest of this government. Longer, in fact, depending on what sort of compromise might take place, and that would be unfortunate because when it comes to Russia, they've got it right. When it comes to Israel, they're starting to toughen the stance. Yet when it comes to China, it's soft. They need to show leadership. They need to show that they're willing to stand up to Xi Jinping's thug regime and send out the message, sorry, you can't always have your own way. We have legitimate security concerns. Beijing might threaten retaliation, but I am convinced that you cannot deal with bullies by pandering to them. And that's the only language the thugs in Beijing understand.